Welcome back to the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast, everybody. This is your co-host, Tyler Yaw, and today I'm with...
Chris Kellum.
And our special guest today is...
Yasmin Shaw Tompkinson.
Thank you so much for coming on today. And if you didn't listen to the last podcast, I'll let you know now. We are doing a nonprofit series for November leading into December. So if you're looking to get involved in the giving season, this is the time to listen to the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast to hear some of our favorite nonprofits that you can hopefully help and support in different ways. But before we get involved with that, what are you sipping on, Chris?
Well, to brighten up my day so I don't get too drunk, I'm just drinking on water with an orange juice. Are you drinking a bubbly? Or is it a bubbly?
Oh, I do have a bubbly water, but I'm mostly drinking Tito's and tonic.
That's
Nice.
typically my go-to
Okay.
outside of the Whiskey and Wisdom podcast. Yeah.
Interesting.
Keeps it light. It's good.
I'm just not a tonic person.
Really?
No. I don't know
If
why.
if you add a little bit of Tito's in there, it helps.
Makes the tonic so much better.
Right.
Yes.
Tito's and soda with some fruit, also
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, true.
I have quite a few friends that they're like, I'll get a Tito's and soda, but I want like 3 limes and 3 lemons. And I was like, okay.
I'm still
Get that citrus in there.
to start things off crazy. What's the difference between a lime and a lemon?
Should I mean,
No, I'm just picking with everybody.
okay, I'm like,
No, I saw
they
something that
taste
said
very
that they're
different to me, but I
that
don't know
they're-
the real.
they're supposedly like the same genus and species. They just taste different because I don't know why.
Huh? Is that
There you go.
for real?
The random
There's
questions,
your
Chris.
next book to read, Chris. So with that being said,
Talking about
Yasmin,
books.
yes, or the executive director
Correct.
of the Cape Fear Literacy Council. And so the way that I got connected with you was actually through my mom, who volunteered there for a while, or
She
actually worked
worked
there.
there,
I was like, she
yeah,
worked
yeah,
there
yeah,
for a
yeah.
while.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I've known these guys for a long time.
Yeah, because I think that was like the first place my mom started, or one of the very first
Yeah.
places my mom started working.
Yeah, when your family moved down here
Right.
from Pennsylvania, she just sort of like so proactive. I love your mom.
Oh, yeah.
Like I know where you get it, right? Like
yes.
she just kind of came around to visit us to see what we were doing. And she shows up with this whole binder of like, well, these are the kinds of things I've worked on. And I was so blown away by that. Like, yeah, she has all kinds of skills, your mom.
Oh, yeah. And then she worked for the Cape Fear Literacy, not the Cape Fear, the Literacy Council where we grew up in PA.
Right.
So that's kind of how she had the
Ah.
idea of it, and how I
Yeah.
even knew that there was literacy councils around the nation.
Yeah.
And of course got involved. And we'll talk a little bit more about the different things that you guys do and stuff too. But the one that I thought was like mind blowing, that she gave us a story that there was a person who had dyslexia, and there was different colors that you can put on the
Yes.
pages, and you can actually read better depending on the color.
Yeah.
Come to find out, when I'm almost completely through my undergrad, I have some type of dyslexia because I found a color that actually works perfect for me,
Wow.
which was really neat and interesting. Because
Yeah.
when I would get the professors at UNCW would try to like make sure you wouldn't cheat off of other people's papers, so they would give like one half of the class pink, the other class purple or blue or purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anytime I got a pink sheet,
Yeah.
it would take me the whole entire time, and I would do horrible
You
on it.
couldn't
And I
focus your
couldn't.
eyes on the
Yeah,
yes. The
it was almost
print.
impossible
Yeah.
for me to read. But if
Yeah.
you gave me that bluish purple color,
Yes.
I was like doing great. But my like real color that helps really well was like a greenish color.
That's so
And yet it was really
interesting.
weird. And I was like, this is crazy.
That is actually called scotopic sensitivity. And so, I mean, there are these very sort of in-depth workshops that you can go through. They're very expensive, but it does come down to like you can get just colored clear film
Mm-hmm.
and put it over any page
Yeah.
and just see what works better for you. I mean, some people have it where
Oh,
it's almost like the words are falling off the page for them.
Mm-hmm.
And people can get prescription glasses with the right color
Oh,
for their
wow.
lenses. But it's a very it's a little known, I think,
Yep.
adaptation or that you did, and it makes
Right.
a huge difference. And actually, black print on bright white paper is one of the hardest things to read.
it is
Oh, wow.
so painful.
Is it? Yeah, for
Yeah.
you too. Yeah.
I mean, just in general, like I remember looking, and I remember when the Kindle first came out, and I'm like, this is so silly that everyone wanted it like the paper white look, and I'm like, why can't you just read it in dark
Dim
mode?
it down. Right.
I was like,
Mhm.
Yes.
read so much easier.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, but before we go too crazy, I mentioned I'm born and raised here, and I've heard the name Cape Fear Literacy Council. But for other people who are like me, what is it?
Thank you, Chris. And we do not mean to be the best kept secret in Wilmington, but we are one of them.
Yeah.
So we are a nonprofit organization.
Mhm.
Our mission is to provide personalized education so adults can transform their lives and contribute to a stronger community. What that means practically is that we train volunteers to serve as tutors, and they can teach either one on one or in very small groups. So it's always like very focused on the student and what the student needs and their specific outcomes. And so we train volunteers to serve as tutors. We match them up with adults who want to improve their education. That can be reading, writing, math. English as a second language is huge.
Okay.
Mhm.
We do digital literacy, and test taking skills, GED, US citizenship. So, so we do a lot of different things. We're able to tailor education so that adults who want to improve their skills can take the next steps. And I really wish we weren't such a well-kept secret. And
Yeah.
thank you for having me on today because, this will be a different audience for us and a different opportunity.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And it's interesting because like I have friends who have reading issues and just wanting to grow
Yes.
in business and in life. And Tyler just mentioned like certain colors help him better. And
Right.
I'm like, I never thought of that. I just like writing in different colors. Like
Okay.
all my notes have always been in like different colors.
Yeah.
And I just thought I didn't realize that that could make an effect on what you remember or how you can process things. I was like, learn something new. Two
Well,
things.
and so that's one of the keys of one of the things I'm very proud of at our organization is we do really good training for the folks that become the tutors. And what we focus on are strategies, right? And everybody can learn, but people learn differently. So some people are visual learners, some people are auditory learners,
Yes.
some people are kinesthetic, meaning they have to like put their hands on and move something around, right? So one of the things that we do is we provide the instruction in a way that the person can receive it, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like sometimes in school you're just lost because
You're not
it
picking up.
doesn't yeah, you're not
Yeah.
picking up what they're putting down. It doesn't mean
Right.
they're not trying really hard to convey something to you, but if you cannot access it, if you cannot receive it, it's frustrating,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right?
I have adults I work with who are the same way. And
Okay.
everyone's like, oh, well, this is how the training is set forth. And it's like, well, that's not how they learn this product, or that's not how they're going to remember it.
Right.
And it's interesting because I work with probably like 15 to 20 different brands, and all of them have different types of training. And you can
Yeah.
see how certain people remember certain things a little bit better or like can take in that information. And it's all kind of based on like like you said, how people remember this information.
Right. Right.
That's interesting. I guess I should send some people to come see you more often.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
One of the things that I like a lot about what you guys do over there too is the concept of like teaching a person how to fish as opposed to just giving them a fish.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right.
And so instead of just like, hey, I'll take you to this place all the time, like, hey, I'm going to help you achieve these goals and show you the process to achieve it. I
Right.
think that's very valuable and stuff. A lot of nonprofits I've noticed in different realms are like, okay, let me just give this to you and move on like to the next
Right.
person. And there's like a very big return of the same people coming for the same thing. Right.
Right. That's exactly
And
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and like at least talking to my mom and talking to you before too, there is that difference of you can actually see a progress of people improving, moving
Yes.
through the program.
Right. And knowledge is something that no one can take away from you,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
Once you have it, it's yours and that's power, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
And And I do think education is, you know, it can lead to different kinds of freedom,
Yeah.
and that people who have been left out for whatever reason, for many reasons, um, like we focus a lot on each individual. Like that's our thing is like
Yeah.
each person is treated with respect. Each person has their own story, has their own goals. But when you do aggregate it, it turns into some like social change, right? Like when and the ripple effect through their families, through the places they work, because they gain self agency through that process of education.
Yeah. And the other thing that's really interesting too that most people I would assume wouldn't know is the lack of literacy is a very broad problem and
Yes.
affects everyone.
Yes. Yeah, we call it a silent crisis, right?
Mhm.
Because one of the things about, especially adult low literacy or low educational skill, is that, I mean, most people, like, you function, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the amazing thing to me is the folks that come to us have to be incredibly brave to walk in our doors. But they, like they have jobs and families and they go to church and
Right.
they contribute in their community. But like once they are more confident, once they have more skills, they can do that so much more, like so much better and
Yeah.
feel comfortable with themselves. I remember years ago we had a gentleman who he would get very frustrated because he knew the Bible really well, but he could not point to the words in the book. So, like,
Hmm.
when somebody was saying something and they would quote scripture, like, he knew the right answer, but he couldn't find it and point to the words and say, "No, these are the words I'm using for my argument."
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, so by learning how to read better and feeling more comfortable with himself, like he could be part of a dialogue that he was just sort of, he was there, but he was on the outside of the circle. He was not
Right.
part of the conversation. And so I think, a lot of times that's, these are folks who are here trying, doing, you know, raising families, doing the things, but like with more confidence, with more skills, they can really engage, and that's what matters.
Yeah.
And I also don't mean to make it like them and us, right? But like they are us.
Yes.
Right.
Everybody's doing all these things, and some of us have more advantages, or we take for granted probably the
Right.
things that we do.
So for the day-to-day of the Cape for Literacy Council, what are the tactical hands-on things that most people are going through?
Okay, yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you for that question. So we serve. Actually, so last year was the most students we've ever served in a single year.
Oh,
Last year,
wow.
we served 604 adults. And the year before that, we served 382 because, we dropped
Oh,
down a lot in the
Of
pandemic.
course, yeah.
And so we were sort of rebuilding. Um, and people come to us with a wide variety of goals. Some people want to get a job or a better job. Some people want to be able to read the Bible, or they couldn't read to their kids. They want to read to their grandkids,
Mhm.
mm,
right? Some people, we have the bigger portion of our program are people learning English as a second or third or fifth language, but they're English language learners. And so they're very diverse. Some of them may have a master's degree in their native country, but coming to the United States, you always need to continue to learn English.
Right.
But we also serve refugees, some of whom have never held a pencil in their lives, never had any education whatsoever. So, every single person, though, I will say, is working on some form of language skills, which are, reading, writing. For English language learners, they're also working on speaking and listening.
okay.
Um, and then usually folks that come from math are trying to pass a test, very often the
Mhm.
GED. And we certainly get folks who they read and write pretty well, but math is their nemesis. And and maybe they haven't taken math for a long time and they need to pass a test. And so it's incredible to get a one-on-one tutor who helps, like, figures out where you are with it and then, you know, presents the information in a way that you can receive it again, right?
Right.
And you get really tangible outcomes from that. So people who come to us, I mean, the day to day is we have an incredible program team that a small paid staff that recruits and trains a couple hundred volunteers each year, and then simultaneously is finding out, like, as potential students come to us, we do interview each person individually. We find out what their goals are. We find out what their background experience has been, and what some of their barriers might be: transportation, childcare. There are a lot of things that make this hard. Um, and then we match them up. Our program team does this and then supports them. We provide them with the right. I mean, we do test everybody that comes to us to figure
Mhm.
out what their strengths are, what their challenges are. And so then we have skill books and curriculum that are designed for programs like this. And so, an individual might come in and, like, let's say, in an ideal situation, an adult learner is coming in. If you're tutoring one-on-one, you're coming in twice a week for an hour and a half each time. And you're doing some vocabulary work, you're doing some comprehension work. Um, there's something called alphabetics, which is sort of glorified phonics in
Oh,
some way, but, like, there was a whole generation, a little bit before me, that they abandoned phonics instruction in the schools.
interesting.
It was whole language instruction. So all of those folks do not know how to break down words.
Oh,
And so when you encounter, like, so whole language can work, but you really need phonics too. You need both for somebody to be able to
So
learn.
is
So
that like just all sight words? Oh,
mm,
can you
wow.
imagine?
That's
Yeah.
just memorize what
Just
every single word
memorize
looks
it,
like.
and, like, and the thing is, for people who are comfortable with learning, you kind of, like, get into, like, for some people, it can work,
Mhm.
but ultimately, if you do not know how to break down words, and especially, like, if you have any kind of learning difference, it's,
Right, yeah.
like, you're that does not work for you.
so
Um,
That's
that's why
crazy.
Hooked on Phonics came out in the 90s and 80s.
Probably.
Probably, but yeah, that had I mean, again, that worked for some people,
Mm,
and it was also flawed, but,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, it didn't help with spelling, but it probably
yeah,
helped
with
with breaking
Right.
down
got
sounds.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always I'm one of those kids who grew up on like
Yeah.
infomercials, and I will
Aren't we all at
always,
this point?
well, millennials and
Yeah.
older, yes. But I was just like, why did this come out of nowhere? I'm like, where did Hooked on Phonics show up from? And I'm like, there has to be a reason, and that
I
kind
I
of
imagine that's right.
that could
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
a precursor.
Yeah.
So the randomness that
We're
runs
all
through my brain.
connected, right?
Yes.
Right.
So you interview and you train up volunteers
Right.
all year long.
Yep.
Uh,
We only have, like, like, 6 to maybe 10 trainings a year,
okay.
so they're spread out. They're on our website.
Right.
So yeah.
Uh, and that's where I was going. I'm like,
Yeah.
so if someone wants to volunteer and
Yeah.
wants to like help others, like what's your website? Like how can
Thank
people?
you. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. So our website is CF, as in Cape Fear
Hmm.
Literacy.org. And we will have, the next set of trainings. And we have a different training for ESL than there is for adult literacy, because there are different strategies that you would want to use with different kinds of learners.
Yeah.
Um, and our workshops, I mean, each of them is 9 hours. It's pretty serious commitment.
Yeah.
But then again, so is volunteering for us. So our instructional volunteers are by far our greatest asset and most important resource at the Literacy Council. It is always our greatest need, is to get more folks trained, because it is a really big commitment. I think there are incredible organizations in this town where you can spend a few hours or a day at Habitat and do something really meaningful.
Mhm.
The Literacy Council is a different kind of commitment. You have to go through this training, then you have to come twice a week, every week. We ask for a 6-month commitment, and a lot of folks will take much longer than that. So, I mean, of course, it's at will,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
but it does to be a volunteer at the Literacy Council. I think you do not. I think the most important quality is patience and an sort of a curiosity, like a willingness to help. Um, but you don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to have a background in any other kind of language. You don't need to speak Spanish or anything else. You just need to want to help somebody and have time, patience, and like I mentioned before, our students are. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like I have paid to belong to a gym, and when I go to the gym, it makes a difference, and it is. I can tell that it is helping me,
Yeah.
Right.
and even so, I do not go back. Right? It's
Yeah.
really hard to make a new habit and to keep a new habit.
Keep it going.
And when you have kids and jobs and, life gets in the way. So our students sometimes, and they tend to have barriers. 98% of our students are low income. 99% say they have barriers to employment. They report barriers to employment. 15% are over the age of 60.
Oh, wow.
So it's never too late to learn. And actually, sometimes it's the older folks that have more time to give, because when you have kids and when you
Right.
have a job or multiple jobs, and if your car breaks down, then all of a sudden you can't get to class, and like
Mhm.
so so it takes perseverance both on the part of our students but also on our volunteers to have patience and hang in there with them, because it is
Yeah.
so rewarding. That is the great thing about it. I mentioned there are all kinds of things you can volunteer to do, but I will say that um, I've had a good life. Don't get me wrong, but tutoring at the Literacy Council, I started as a volunteer. It's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It was seriously one of the most rewarding experiences, and I think most of our volunteers would say that. Like
Mhm.
you come here, you think you're going to do something for somebody else, but really you just get so much out of that experience, out of that
I
exchange.
think it's that one-on-one work too that they really get a lot of out of too. Because like I've done Habitat Humanity and stuff too, and it's really neat to like be there for a day and be able to like literally almost build a whole house like in one day, like
Hmm.
the outskirts of it anyway. Um, but like being able to like sit down with someone and watch the progress over a 6 month,
Yeah.
a year period, I can only imagine like the type of gratitude you'd be able to get from that. Like especially like
Yeah.
I know it's not a large portion, but like that older individual that comes in that just wants to read to their grandchild, to
Yeah.
be able to like see that, because I'm sure they come and report back like, hey, I
Yeah.
was able to read this book to my
Yes.
granddaughter or grandson or whatever.
And
Yeah.
That's special.
Yeah, you do. I mean, learning is very incremental, but you get those sort of light bulb moments
Right.
of, and you can almost see like like the gears shifting and somebody being like, "Oh, I get it."
yeah.
Right.
Coming back to that phonics piece, I worked with a gentleman, this is years ago, and he was a real beginning learner. Um, and he he didn't have phonics. So we started working on like parts of words and stuff. And one day he calls me and he's like, I pulled over. He's like, I'm driving, but I pulled over to the side of the road because I can read street signs now. And he's like,
Oh,
I've lived
wow.
in this town my whole life and I know how to get around. And I always like I know where things are. I know to look for this blue sign or that pink building or whatever. But he's like, I saw market, and now I know that's Market Street. He's like, I've been driving it my whole life, but
Oh,
now I can
wow.
see it,
Yeah.
right? It's like, yeah, it's incredible.
Oh, that's neat.
It's just sorry. I never thought about that. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people where if you ask me what street to turn on, I'm like, I couldn't tell you just because I don't know street names.
Yeah.
But I can tell you how to get there.
Yeah.
Uh I was just like, oh, never thought of that. Like some people just aren't able to read the street signs or
Right.
properly pronounce it
Right.
outside of like the typical arguments of like, is it cur or car?
I'm told it's car. But
I-
you're from here. What do you think?
I'm not the one.
I was like, you brought it up now,
Yes.
but
It's funny because my mom's not from here, so like she's traveled, so I say cur.
Kurt, because that's
yeah.
what the letters say,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know cars, so I'm like,
Right.
anyways. I have a question.
Yes.
I have some paperwork.
Oh,
Wait.
yeah. I
didn't know if you wanted
Oh,
what
well,
was on there, what you got for us.
I brought stats just in case.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah.
Because I know you mentioned like the Cape Fear Literacy Council has been around for 40 years,
Yeah. Next year is our 40th birthday.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
And like it's also amazing to note how many people you guys have worked with.
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're talking about even the last 2 years, that's almost 1,000 people.
Well, so not
Well,
technically, right? Sorry. So
because people transition or they're
right,
doing
and some people stay with us year to
Yeah.
year, right?
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so nationally, there are 48 million adults. That's 15% of the adult U.S. population that can't read above a third grade level.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
And New Hanover County is pretty much on track with that too. In Pender County, it's about 20%. In Brunswick County, it's about 17%. In Columbus County, it's about 30% of adults who are at that limited level. And again, it doesn't mean they're not out there working. They're out there working and trying, but like when they get a note from school, they might not know, is their kid in trouble, or is there a field trip coming up, right?
Right.
Like, just think about how much harder how exhausting it would be every day. Like, every
Mhm.
visual sign you encounter doesn't make that much sense to you, right? Or not
Right.
enough. And so that's up to a third grade level. And then if you go up to like about a sixth grade level, those percentages get even higher. In New Hanover County, it's an additional 30%. So that means 45% of adults in New Hanover County, approximately, right,
Right.
are reading around a sixth grade level or below.
Wow.
Now, at a sixth grade level, you can
I'd say it's
do a lot,
Yeah.
right? But that confidence piece, right? Or to be able to engage in all kinds of, I don't know, to feel freedom. I think
Yeah.
you feel more confident when you know, when you can read what you want to read,
Yes.
right? And then certainly, like we were talking about literature before, like, and then like this is all survival skills, right? But like, what about the joy of escaping in a book or learning about
Mhm.
another culture or place? Like that, reading can transport you.
For sure.
And so that's the joy. And if all of your energy is going into survival, it is tiring. And then for English as a second language, um, in New Hanover County, in the United States, 22.5% of the US population speaks a language other than English at home. In all of North Carolina, it's 13.8%. In New Hanover County, it's only 7%, but still,
It's still a lot.
that's a lot,
Right, yeah.
right? And so when you are at home, you speak one language, and in school, you have to learn in a different language.
Mhm.
And this is not like, when you go to another country for fun, it's an
Mhm.
adventure, and even that can be hard.
Yeah.
But like, when this is your home and you have to navigate and you have to go to the store or make a phone call or anything, and it's not just talking. It's like, we had a really interesting example from one of our students from Greece who said, the way the healthcare system works there, like, her husband was having some heart issues and they didn't really know what was going on. And in their country, you call your doctor and you wait for your doctor to respond to you. And the doctor didn't, because that is not the system
Yeah,
here.
that's
Like,
not here.
it was, And so they just didn't know until they, I think, talked to, maybe it was their tutor, was like, No, this is, like kind of clarifying what the situation was. I was like, no, you should go to Medac or the ER.
Right.
And it really was a situation where that was necessary. But it has to do with cultural expectations, right? Like in other countries, you wouldn't talk to your child's teacher. Like that's just
Mm,
not done.
Mm.
And here, if you don't advocate for your kid, they can really get left out of
Right.
things,
yeah,
right?
which
That's
is
interesting. I never thought about those different cultural pieces kind of coming into play.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's neat.
you're right. It's customs, culture, language. Right. There's so many different elements to thriving here in this community and understanding, understanding
yeah.
Mhm.
everything about it, right?
That's that's an interesting like thought. Because in my head, I'm like, well, I know English isn't the first language for everybody, which is why most dial tones call up and say, "Do you want a English number one or Spanish number two?"
Right.
But you forget how much of a melting pot the states are. So, like, there's people who don't speak either. So, how are they going
Yes.
to get assistance?
Yeah.
And I think it's great that you guys are there to help people who maybe their main language is Greek or,
Right.
Dutch. Someone
Yeah.
comes from like South Africa
Yeah.
and you're able to assist them and kind of help them.
Last year, we served students from 45 different countries, and they spoke 30 different
Oh,
languages.
wow.
So, I mean, the only thing they had in common was trying to learn
Hmm.
English,
Yeah.
right? But it's cool because I was talking to. We actually have a woman now who on our board of directors, and when she first came to the United States, she was a student at the Literacy Council,
Oh,
and
wow.
now she has become, like, she just kind of needed she, a little bit of a leg up, right? Like she was pretty well educated in her native country, but English she had studied did not prepare her for being successful
Mm.
here. Um, and she said her first real friend in America was a Korean student in her class because
Oh,
they
Oh,
were
wow.
both sort of like the only way they could communicate with each other was in English that they were both working on. And I think a lot of it was sort of like, wow, like America's different. And
Yeah.
very.
this is what, like, how do you do this and how do you do that? And right, like it's I
Huh,
like the melting pot that you
I like
said.
that.
There's something I wanted to touch on that you mentioned previously and then transition after that.
Sure.
The first thing is I know you mentioned that 45% of people in New Hanover County read at sixth grade or below. And that made me think about that is there was a book. Chris brings up the degrees that I have more than I do. But I tried to read this book that was on a much higher advanced
Right.
reading schedule than I am good at. And
Yeah.
I'm not the greatest reader of all time to begin with.
Yeah.
And just trying to read that was like frustrating and hard to deal with. So like thinking about that again is like,
Right.
okay, so sixth grade, a lot of the books that I do read are slightly above that. And
Right.
just feeling like that. And a lot of the stuff that Chris knows that I read are like growth oriented and leadership and stuff.
Right.
So being that person who wants to get ahead and then just can't because they can't pick up one of those like business
Yeah.
books
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
start reading, like that really connected with
Yeah.
me, kind of thinking that through.
That's so true. So there's like, if you think about what you read, there's a comfort level,
Hmm.
Mhm.
then there's an instructional level where you kind of have to work to get at it.
Right.
And then there's a frustration level, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody has that. Like, I tend to read books that are comfortable for me because
Mhm.
for me, I want reading to be easy and pleasure. Like for me,
Yeah.
Right.
it's an escape. Um, but I know a lot of people who want to learn. They're always like, so they're reading at the instructional level because that's what is
Yeah.
Tyler's like
Right.
that, right? Like it fuels you.
Mhm.
Um, but but right, but we all have that frustration
Yeah.
level, and it just depends on where you're starting from, and there are different kinds, right? Like I have no like I am spatially illiterate. I will admit to that. Technologically, I'm terrible, and so like anything like the instructions for assembling a piece of furniture make me want to cry. Like I just
Mhm.
hate that stuff. Um, which is why I have friends that help me with
That'll help you. Yeah.
stuff like that. Because for them, it's
Smart,
just
yeah.
like it's like it's natural to them, right? And for me, it's awful. And so, yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
So the unrelated next part
Oh,
to
okay.
the question
Yeah.
is there's another group that I'm very involved with in the area too. It's called 1 Million Cups.
hmm
And I love Jack. He runs a lot of it too. But one of the questions that they asked that I've been wanting to ask everyone who comes on today is we talked a lot about the people that are amongst our community that we can help, but how can the listeners from our podcast help you all as a community?
Thank you for that
Hmm.
question. Um, so I mean, first and foremost, thank you for this opportunity. Like I
Yeah,
said,
of
we
course.
are about to turn 40, and next year will be a 40th birthday. And I just don't think there's enough awareness of what we do.
For sure.
Hmm.
The scope of the problem, the way we approach it. I think what is special about the Literacy Council and programs like ours is that it is so personalized. And so, ways that people can help are to come and become volunteers, but that is a huge commitment.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, and it takes time and patience. And then, of course, every nonprofit needs funding. So we're going to be doing a big push, especially next year, but every year. And I think for every nonprofit, we are trying to do, good in the community, but it's not just getting funding, but it's sustainable funding.
Hmm.
Okay.
That is, I think, one of the hardest things for every nonprofit. Yeah, and so I say this about the Literacy Council, but I mean it for whatever mission speaks to you. Get involved in a way that helps them over the long term. Like if you can give $100 a month, if you can give $5 a month, like whatever your capacity is, commit to a place that you care about and help them have sustaining members that like make sure that their mission is going to be successful. Um and we have, this is the first year that we have a full-time person who is helping us raise money for us.
Oh, nice.
And we just hired a full-time person to do our communications. Like we're a little nonprofit. So like
Yeah.
we don't
Hmm.
this is not where we put our money in the past. And
Right.
we're finally getting to the place where it's like, okay, for us to level up, we need to be able to like we have to have that infrastructure. We have to be
Yes.
able to tell our story and reach more people and work with our donors and write the grants and so so another way somebody could help us is to invite us to your book club, invite us to your if you're a for-profit that does sponsorships, if you know other organizations or companies that do, um if you want us to come present to you, if you want us to, help us make connections into the community that can help sustain the work we do, because I do think um, it's so fundamental what we do. And actually, a lot of people focus on children's education, which is absolutely essential, but the National Institutes for Health reports that the number one factor in a child's academic success is whether his or her mother reads to them.
Mm.
That's
I
it,
could see that.
right?
Yeah.
And that and for your health status, I have this stat here too somewhere, but it's that your I've got it somewhere. Sorry. The strongest predictor of someone's health status is not age, income, employment, education, or ethnicity. It is literacy skill level.
Oh, wow.
And 46% of all people cannot read their prescription bottles on the labels on their bottles, right? Like it is a pervasive problem.
Yeah.
It is underlying, like they actually predict the future needs for prison capacity based on third grade reading scores,
No, wow.
because by the time until third grade you learn to read, and from third grade on you read to learn.
Mm.
So you know And so, like, if there's no intervention, if there's no extra help for those kids, then they become adults that also struggle,
Yeah.
right? And so we're trying to work on the adult piece to help mitigate the child piece. So it's just low adult education is an underlying issue for pretty much every social problem there is. Um, Unemployment, underemployment, homelessness, incarceration, alcohol and drug abuse, like like there are so many things that are tied to that lack of self-agency.
Yeah.
Um, so help us tell our story is what we really need from this community. Like
Yeah.
this opportunity again, like thank you.
Oh,
This
of
is just
course.
this is
Absolutely.
like a very different approach for
Yeah.
us. And so we're
Mhm.
trying to learn what all we can do.
So then what would success look like for you?
Ooh, I like that question. Thank you. So there's some layers to that.
Oh, of
Okay.
course.
Right? Like, so, again, we focus so much on each individual. So for me personally, that's what it comes down to. Like, yes, it's amazing when somebody can get a better job because her skills are improved, but I I don't see less value in a grandmother being able to read to her grandkids, right? Like it is that that sense of self, that sense of possibility and accomplishment that matters. So that's one layer, and that's the very individual, personal layer, which to me ultimately is why we do what we do. Um, but when you aggregate that and our goals are to help a certain portion of our students, not everybody. I mean, it's hard, right? It's really
Yes.
hard to
Right.
do this. It's hard to stay with it. It's hard. It's like, especially if school was hard for you to begin with. We are not a magic pill, right? Like you still have to do the work. You get a lot of support. You get a lot of it's personal. It's the way you can learn. Um, but when we want to see a certain percentage of our students making progress, on tests, but also then not necessarily like self-reporting, like I, you know, I volunteer more, I got my driver's license, I, participate more in my community, or I can do things by myself now. Like, those are the kinds of statistics that we're always tracking. Um and then another layer is I mean, we're a business, right? We
Mhm.
are a nonprofit. Every nonprofit has to basically run like an entrepreneurial for profit all the time.
Mhm.
And so I spent 11 years on the program. I started as a volunteer. I spent 11 years on the program side, and now I'm on the administrative side. And so for me, now success is financial stability
Mm.
and to be able to project over the years to come. Like we want to, we served more students than we ever had before last year,
Yeah.
but I want to make sure we're not losing program integrity in that process, right? We need
Right.
more volunteers. And to train more volunteers, we need to be able to scale it up. And to scale it up, we can't lose what is special around the personalization, right? So it's those are all incredibly important things, and it's a sort of delicate balance, but that's exactly what we're working on right now. And so for me, right, like in my heart, it's each individual student, and in my head, it is the financial stability of the organization over time. And honestly, we want to lay the groundwork for the next 20 years or the next 40 years because I don't want the people in the future. I mean, this problem is not going away.
No.
Mhm.
Um, you can see the divide that was already um, before the pandemic. That educational divide has only grown since the pandemic. So there are always going to be people who, as adults, need education, and so if we can, like get legacy donors who write us into their will.
Mhm.
Oh,
We've had like a handful over the past 15, 20 years, and it makes a huge difference. And again, this is true for every nonprofit, right?
Right.
yeah.
So whatever whatever your passion is, think about different ways that you may be able to like truly move the needle for them.
Yeah.
Something that Alex, our previous guest, was talking about too is how people underestimate what $5 or $15 a month
Yes.
could do for a nonprofit. So not only is it income coming in, but it's a consistent that
Yes.
you can budget with.
Yeah.
And the more that you can budget, the more you can impact.
Right. Because grants, we don't know. I mean,
Right.
some of them have been kind of consistent, but you don't know year to year.
Mhm.
A fundraiser could be great or it could flop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
But it costs some money to
yes,
host fundraisers.
exactly. Right. Like, so fundraisers are actually one of the less efficient ways of raising money. But what you're saying about like the $5 a month,
Mhm.
or, $20 a month or whatever it is, when you can count on that, it is unrestricted, operational. Like you can
Yeah.
build your budget knowing that this is what we this is what we have the capacity to do, right? And
Right.
I
so,
like that.
yeah,
If you have
It's
Netflix just raised your
gosh.
membership
Right.
$5 a month.
just-
So there you go.
I mean, there's so many nonprofits out there, and like you said, like you should invest in what kind of speaks to you.
right.
Me personally, hearing Sarah McLachlan sing on the TV like
With
makes
the
me
animals.
yes, and it hits you in the heart. But I'm not going to donate to those pets because I don't have any pets to worry about. I would much rather donate to something that's going to help people read books
Right.
because I like books. Like we were
Yeah.
talking, like if you have
Mhm.
1,000 books, you can
Yeah.
try and qualify for a library. So to me, like helping more people have that opportunity
Yeah.
to read books and escape sometimes or just grow.
Yeah.
I think that's
yeah.
something cool.
I do need to mention that we have a side hustle,
Cool.
which is, and I'm thinking about you and your 1,000 books. We collect used books,
Okay.
preferably gently used.
Right.
And we are an Amazon bookseller now.
Oh,
So
no way.
if there's, and we have the whole set of volunteers, and this is their sole purpose, is they collect books for us. They sort of scan through them, review, evaluate if it is worth it to us to sell them. If they are, then we have an inventory. We have this like whole cool little shed
Oh, that's
that
neat.
is like a little library in there. And so we are selling books on Amazon every day. And then that money goes straight back into our programs.
That is really cool.
And if we can't sell them, but honestly, probably maybe 10% of the books that we get qualify for that. So then we do a few book sales over the course of the year. We have one coming up December 4th at High Wire.
Okay.
And they're cheap, it's like maybe $2 a book, but like it's fun. You can have a drink, you can like just
Right.
peruse and support us, support the Literacy Council. And then if we can't sell books, then we donate them. We repopulate little free libraries, we donate them to other nonprofits. We make sure, we have partnerships with like the food bank and with of course, right now my brain is failing me, but the Boys and Girls Club, we're actually right now collecting kids' books to take out to Western North Carolina because
Okay.
there's a specific
Right.
drive going on there. And then a vast majority also can go back to the Friends of the Public Library book sale, which is an amazing event that really does so much for our public libraries,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
And so we're just trying to do the most good with the books that we receive. And so if you ever get tired of having 1,000 books in your house, you know where to bring some or bring them when you're ready.
Yes.
So our new question that we're asking everyone coming in this month is if you could tell someone comes knocks on your door, if you could tell them one thing that wants your help, what would that be?
One thing that wants our help. Oh, that's such a good question, and I should have prepared for that. But
Sorry.
and
Like
this
to
is
throw
the
a
thing,
wrench.
right?
Yes.
Like I should always have an elevator pitch, and I'm not really good at that. I think that for us, for the Literacy Council, I think I have to go with awareness, right? Like the fact that Chris grew up in this town and has only heard of us. Oh, and I can relate this to how we teach vocabulary, right? So there are these different levels.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, if you're learning a new word There's a level which is, I've never heard that word before. We'll call that a 0. Never heard it.
Right.
Level 1 is, I've heard it, but I don't know what it is. So that's you with
Yes.
the Literacy Council. The next level up is, I've heard it. I kind of know what that is, but I'm not 100% confident that I know it, right? And then the top level is, I own that word, right?
Yeah.
And I would love, love, love for more people to own the knowledge, right? To understand what the Literacy Council is, so that if you encounter somebody that would be interested in volunteering or might donate books or might need our help as a learner, that you would know, here's who you can call and here's what they do and here's why it works and it's a good place,
Yeah.
And so help us level up. That's
like
what
that.
I would
I love
ask
it.
for.
That's great.
You mentioned earlier in the episode, but how can people like find you guys? Are you on social media?
We are on social
Okay.
media. I personally am not. I am a technophobe. But the Literacy Council is. We have Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn,
All the
maybe
good
something
stuff.
else. I don't know. I don't know all the stuff, but
Yeah.
Angela does. She's our communications director. And that's the thing, right? Like, so she will have the capacity to link this podcast to our
Right.
website, which is
Nice.
magic to me. Like, I don't understand any of that, but I don't need to
There
anymore,
you go.
right?
Exactly.
But this is the thing, like, we are finally getting to the place where we can do those things. But yes, so everywhere our handle is cfliteracy.org.
Okay.
So that is consistent everywhere.
Cool.
Very good.
Yeah.
Smart.
Love it. How was your drink?
Delicious.
Oh.
Good.
Don't worry, my water was good too. That's what I'm doing. No, I'm trying to like always bring it. Like we always have fun and we get real serious, and then like gotta have something real silly at the end. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah,
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
This
This
has
is
been a day of learning.
yay.
Yes,
Well, that's fantastic. And we all need those days, right?
Exactly.
for sure.
And thank you for thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for making this so comfortable. Like
Oh yeah.
I was
Anytime.
kind of nervous, but I figure I know your mom, so
Right. Yeah.
it wouldn't be that bad.
Exactly. Yeah, she won't be in the shape otherwise.
Yes. But thank you guys for listening to the episode. Thank you guys for showing up. Shout out, just so you guys know, we do have live episodes once a month, so you can
Mhm.
come out wherever we're recording. Typically it's the Azalea Station. The seasons are changing, so we might mix it up a little bit, but keep us in mind. But on the real life, like, comment, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.